capital, Abuja, records highest COVID-19 infections on Monday. Ondo State Governor Oluwarotimi Akeredolu wins state APC governorship primary in a landslide. In international news, European Union reaches 750 billion euros agreement for virus recovery fund. And in sport, 2020 Ballon d'Or award cancelled.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Again, for the second day, Lagos has been surpassed in recorded COVID-19 cases. The nation's capital recorded the highest number of 102 cases on Monday, 2 more than Lagos. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control announced 562 new cases that have pushed up the country's tally to 37,225. And CDC says 15,333 cases have been discharged, while 801 deaths have been recorded across the country. 11 states lodged cases in the double digits, including Plateau with 52 cases, Kwara 50, Abia 47, and Kaduna 35 cases. 7 states reported cases in single digits. The COVID-19 pandemic is spreading its wings into the nation's correctional services. Akwa Ibom has announced an isolation policy for new inmates at its prisons. They will now be subjected to a compulsory 14-day isolation. The Command Police Public Relations Officer, ASC Ogbaje, said in a press statement the inmates would be sent to any available correctional center in the state at the completion of the 14-day isolation. He said the construction of a 100-bed isolation building has begun at Ikotekpene Custodial Center as part of Governor Udom Emmanuel's efforts to support and boost the criminal justice system in the country. By a landslide, Governor Oluwarotimi Akeredolu has swept the All Progressives Congress governorship primary in Ondo State on Monday. Akeredolu scored 2,458 votes from the slightly more than 3,100 delegates who voted during the primary exercise. He won in all the local government areas of the state. 7 other aspirants were on the ballots. His closest rival, Olushola Oke, scored 262 votes. This victory paves the way for the incumbent governor to be the party's flag bearer in the governorship election that will hold in October. The Niger Delta Development Commission saga has taken so many different turns lately. The latest was in a revelation by the Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Godswill Akpabio, that most of the contracts awarded by the Commission went to members of the National Assembly. He made the disclosure during an appearance before the House of Representatives panel that is investigating allegations and counter-allegations in the NDDC. Akpabio has implicated chairman of the House Committee and some other lawmakers as being recipients of some of the contracts. As a result, the chairman of the House Committee on Niger Delta, Olubunmi Ojo, has recused himself from the hearing because of the accusation. House Speaker Femi Gbajabiamila has given Akpabio 48 hours to publish names of lawmakers that have received NDDC contracts. The House Committee is investigating alleged mismanagement of funds in the Commission, and this is getting messy. Still on the NDDC, a coalition of civil society organizations in the country is calling for the overhaul of the NDDC and the disbandment of its leadership structure. The group had reached a number of resolutions at the end of its meeting over the weekend. The coalition said it was making the call so the NDDC could be repositioned for efficiency and results for which purpose it was set up to achieve. Among the resolutions reached are a call for the appointments of a new board and new principal managers that would be able to promote transparency and public accountability in all the Commission's affairs. The CSO says in a statement, the National Assembly has failed in its oversight function by not conducting regular assessments of the Commission's work to present what it calls the monumental infractions that have already occurred. At least 11 persons were confirmed killed on Monday night in a fresh attack on Goragan village in southern Kaduna State. Fulani militias are suspected to have masterminded the attack. 7 others were reported to have sustained varying degrees of injuries. There were some residents of the village that had been reported missing. Vice Chairman of the Christian Association of Nigeria in the local government area, Pastor Isaac Ango Makama, said at least 58 attackers stormed the village in the early morning hours and shot randomly, killing many and burning several houses. He said the internally displaced camps, including the camp at Zonkwa, have been received an influx of more than displaced persons daily. Makama said these new arrivals have stretched the resources of the camps, which are now in urgent need of drugs and treatment facilities for trauma. He called for help toward alleviating the plight of the IDPs.
Coming up, African news. South Africa's inflation rate drops to a 16-year low. And later, international news. European Union reaches 750 billion euros agreement for virus recovery fund.
You are watching ANN.
See you tomorrow, Papa. I am happy and I know I'm free.
Now na time for meeting. Any landlord when no show go pay fine.
Make I go call her.
House number 1. Present.
Papa, they don't stop me too.
House number 5.
And they're angry that you are not here.
Just put me on the window there so that I can see them and I can hear them.
He's not around, so his house is sanctioned.
Present. I carry data for head, I carry them for back. Correct data when no dey payment. Say I know they know me, say I know they see your landlord. Talk to me face to face.
Explore without limits. Turn it up on MTN, the reliable data network.
Driver, fire ahead.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. South Africa's inflation has dropped to a 16-year low of 2.1%, going below the central bank's target band for the first time since 2005. Economists are doubtful this will be enough to push the central bank to cut interest rates by a big margin.
The demand for goods and services in South Africa is still declining. This is largely as a result of the hard lockdown instituted in March to curb the spread of Covid-19. Limited movement in a severely constrained economy was most evident in the transport sector.
Fuel prices dropped about 12% in April and about 12% in May. And overall, we're at just over 26% lower than this time last year. This is really the one big story in the May CPI. If we look at the month-to-month movement, we had a negative 0.6% change in the inflation rate from April to May. And all of this was made up by the transport category, which in this case was basically fuel prices.
Since April, taxi operators were only allowed 70% capacity, but the president bumped that up to 100%. With increased fuel demand and rising oil prices, inflation could start picking up again. The May CPI showed food and non-alcoholic beverages increased by 4.4% year-on-year. Administered costs, electricity in particular, has become more expensive for South Africans.
Goods and services that households typically buy is going up, but it's going up at a slower rate than what it went up previously. Hidden within the overall low inflation rate, there are certain products that are still kind of on the high side. We could look at some of your municipal services. such as electricity and water, municipal rates. These are in around about the 10% mark.
But with inflation way below at the bottom end of the Reserve Bank's target of 3 to 6%, many believe there's room for another rate cut.
This is the first time in many, many years that it's fallen below the 3% mark, which would indicate that from a broad economic perspective, that probably inflation is a bit lower than what the authorities would like to see. One doesn't want too little inflation in the economy because it means that people may delay purchases, and that's bad for overall demand. But you also don't want to see too much because then you lose value to your money too quickly.
A scenario the Reserve Bank is monitoring closely. But with an economic contraction of 7% expected this year, South Africans may just get a little bit more relief with another rate cut at the end of July.
The Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, is experiencing public health challenges in different fronts as it tackles COVID-19 pandemic with a dash of Ebola. The World Health Organization says its efforts to contain the Ebola outbreak in the country are being hindered by financial and logistics challenges. Correspondent Chris Okamringa has the story.
Congolese health officials are on their way to deliver medical supplies for treating Ebola on the outskirts of Mbandaka city. The outbreak in Equator province has occurred in a remote area with a poor road network. That has made it difficult for health workers to access patients. The World Health Organization fears the increasing number of cases may cause the disease to spread to neighboring provinces.
And this is of great concern, particularly as it is now surpassing the previous outbreak in this area, which was closed off and controlled at a total of 54 cases. Some cases are located in remote areas surrounded by rainforests, demanding additional capacities and resources for the response.
According to health officials, more than 12,000 people have been vaccinated over the past 6 weeks. But Ebola cases continue to increase. The WHO is calling on donors to fund its activities in order to strengthen the response effort.
So far, WHO has mobilized 1.7 million from its own fund, and if we need to scale up due to the fast spread of the outbreak, we need more funding.
The DRC is facing many other epidemics like measles, cholera and the coronavirus, which have affected the response to the Ebola outbreak.
The Ebola outbreak in Equator province is the 11th to occur in the DRC. It has spread to 6 health zones in less than 2 months since the outbreak was declared. The World Health Organization and the Congolese government are working together to try and contain the outbreak, but they are facing financial and logistic challenges.
Uganda's economy is heavily reliant on imports, but it earns some income from exporting food produce. Those exports are now battered by COVID-19, causing the country to record major losses. Correspondent Hilary Ayesiga has the story.
In this city market in Nakawa, the bananas are plenty, but the buyers are few. Following a bountiful harvest, Ugandan farmers are stuck with food.
The prices for food, like bananas, are falling drastically, affecting farmers' households' incomes. This is largely attributed to the effects of COVID-19 pandemic that have affected distribution and consumption of the food chains.
Uganda exports bananas and other foods to Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo. But with disruptions in transport and closing of borders due to the pandemic, the markets are cut off and the prices of food items are falling. Under pressure, the Ugandan president is pushing regional leaders to reopen their borders for surplus food.
It's a dilemma that some parts of Africa don't have enough food. Here, the food is rotting. This is really not good management. So we should cooperate and take advantage of all these advantages.
According to the country's Bureau of Statistics, Uganda produces over 5 million tons of bananas every year. Experts are now advising the farmers to process and store them until regional markets are open.
Fresh bananas can be processed into toke flour, flour for instant porridge, baking flour, biscuits, cakes, cookies, and so on. Farmers are encouraged to work hand in hand with PIBID management to add value to their bananas to avoid losses.
But this is a long-term venture which requires huge investment capital that many local farmers say they cannot afford. As more countries ease on COVID-19 restrictions, it is hoped that farmers will soon get their produce and foods back to market and return their household income to pre-pandemic levels.
When we return, international news. European Union reaches 750 billion euros agreement for virus recovery fund. And later, sport. 2020 Ballon d'Or award cancelled.
You are watching ANN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. After almost 5 days of back and forth discussions, European Union leaders have finally agreed on a 750 billion euro, approximately $850 billion stimulus plan to help fund Europe's recovery from the coronavirus pandemic. It is the biggest joint borrowing ever agreed by the EU. Summit Chairman and President of the European Council, Charles Michel, describes it as a pivotal moment for Europe. The deal would focus on creating reforms to help businesses rebound from the pandemic and provide hundreds of billions of dollars in grants and loans to member states. The Commission has also agreed to a core budget of 1 trillion euros from 2021 to 2027. French President Emmanuel Macron describes the agreement as a historic day for Europe, while Belgian Prime Minister Sophie Wilms says this is a huge investment into the future of Europe. The Brussels summit began on Friday and lasted for more than 90 hours, making it EU's longest since 2000. Peru's health ministry says the country is now Latin America's 6th COVID-19 impacted nation, behind Brazil and Mexico with almost 400,000 cases. Dan Collins reports Peru is now struggling to contain COVID-19 fatalities as the country has so far recorded more than 13,000 COVID-19 deaths.
Ventilators, intensive care beds and piped oxygen. This is exactly what had been lacking for thousands of COVID-19 patients in Peru. The virus has rampaged through the country, hitting the poorest hardest. Many died in their homes as ill-equipped hospitals overflowed.
From the outset of the pandemic, Peru's chronically underfunded healthcare system has hindered its response to COVID-19. The emergency has forced it to bring its healthcare up to speed, and in the last few months, it's doubled its number of hospital beds by building field hospitals like this across the country.
A 200-bed hospital built in just 2 weeks in Peru's most populous district east of the capital Lima. Opened by President Martín Vizcarra via San Juan de Lurigancho, is one of a dozen new dedicated coronavirus hospitals.
The virus is still with us. We must not let our guard down. We have to fight COVID-19 until we defeat it.
Crucially, the field hospitals aim to get coronavirus patients early, before it's too late to save them.
We've seen a 5-fold rise in the number of patients who need attention for COVID-19. What they need most is oxygen, so we've had to install more beds, but all with piped oxygen.
Peru's excess mortality rate, measured as the number of deaths above the normal average, could be as high as 40,000, one of the highest in the world. Fiorella Molinelli is with Peru's Social Security Agency, Salud.
There are deaths from suspected COVID-19. They may have died in their homes from acute respiratory illness, a stroke, or another cause, which does not allow us to definitely say they died from COVID-19. We're investigating and we'll have figures by the end of the year.
Israel has reimposed some lockdown measures after a vigorous second surge in coronavirus infections. After a marathon emergency cabinet session, these new lockdown measures will see shops, hairdressers, and attractions all closed. Gyms and fitness studios will also be closed at all times, while restaurants, which opened again in May, will return to takeaways and deliveries only. All indoor gatherings of 10 or more persons will be banned.
Round 2 of corona in Israel's main COVID-19 critical care ward.
The first wave was overwhelming. It was like that. It was in very short time, a lot of patients, very, very sick. We were here day and night.
This time, things are different.
We see a patient that comes, they come sick, and they become sick very gradually, and then they become very, very sick, but it is all gradually, and we can see it coming.
Physicians say they're now slowing the virus spread with anticoagulants and antivirals. But medical experts admit no one anywhere has a solid understanding of what COVID-19 really is. That's one reason Israel's government is partially locking down the country for a second time in 3 months. A move disputed by medical professionals, disgruntled Israelis, and a growing number of the estimated 21% unemployed.
I don't think that any curfew or shutdown will do the work, because the corona is here. Corona is here with the shutdown, without the shutdown, the corona is here.
The country didn't give us any money to survive. And each one of us will have to decide if it's worth it to keep fighting.
Critical care patients are also fighting.
They are young and they are people without any risk factors, and they need to go home. And I'm not sure that everybody will do that.
Theirs is a battle with limited options.
South Korea's first ever military communication satellite has been successfully launched by private operator SpaceX. This satellite is part of Seoul's efforts at building up its defense capabilities. The Anasis 2 is also intended to enhance the South's ability to defend itself against the nuclear-armed North, which invaded in 1950. SpaceX confirmed the satellite deployed about 32 minutes after liftoff. South Korea is the 10th country in the world to earn a military-only communication satellite, which will provide permanent and secure military communications. The satellite is expected to reach its orbit of 36,000 kilometers in 2 weeks, and South Korea's military will take over the system in October after testing. Seoul and Washington are security allies, but the relationship has cooled for some years now.
Up next, sport. 2020 Ballon d'Or Award cancelled. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow this story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. In sport, 2021 Rugby League World Cup will kick off in October. New Zealand will begin their campaign against Lebanon, and Jamaica will make their debut against Ireland the following day. England kick off the tournament against Samoa in late October. Organizers say this will be the biggest and best Rugby League World Cup ever, as the men's, women's and wheelchair tournaments will be played concurrently for the first time. The Ballon d'Or awarded annually to the world's best footballer has been cancelled because of the coronavirus pandemic. Barcelona's Lionel Messi won the trophy in the men's category last year, while US striker Megan Rapinoe won the women's category. England's Stanley Matthews was the first winner of the award when he was voted European Footballer of the Year. Until 1995, the Ballon d'Or was only awarded to European players. When it was extended to players in the European clubs, it was extended to footballers for the rest of the world in 2007. That is it in news this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.